The words, delivered with a chilling finality, seemed to freeze the very air in my sunlit apartment. Lena, it's just a business. Family is more important. My mom's voice was calm, a practiced, unnerving calm that felt more like a verdict than a conversation. It was the tone she reserved for life's most serious transactions. You either sign it over to Aaron, or don't bother calling yourself our daughter anymore. The phone felt like a block of ice against my ear. I could picture her perfectly on the other end, sitting ramrod straight in her favorite velvet armchair, the one that looked out onto their manicured lawn, her face a mask of resolute disappointment. The ultimatum hung between us, a guillotine blade poised to sever the last frayed thread of our relationship. Hi, I'm Lena. I'm 31 years old, and I own a small but thriving restaurant, the Spice Route, nestled in a quiet downtown district. It's not a five-star establishment with crystal chandeliers and sommeliers, but it's mine in a way that feels bone deep. I built it from an empty, dusty shell of a room, a place that smelled of neglect and forgotten dreams. After graduating from culinary school, I poured every last penny of my savings, money earned from waiting tables and late-night catering gigs, into these four walls. I sacrificed sleep, trading it for late nights perfecting recipes and early mornings haggling with suppliers. I surrendered my weekends, my social life, for 6 long years, my hands permanently bearing the small nicks and burns that were the badges of my labor. My parents never believed it would work. To them, my passion was a frivolous distraction. They saw my culinary degree as an expensive mistake, and my dream of owning a restaurant as a childish fantasy. Cooking is a hobby, Lena, not a career, my father would say, his voice laden with the unspoken comparison to my younger brother, Aaron, the golden child, whose every misstep was lovingly reframed as a valuable learning experience. While I was studying flavor profiles and knife skills, he was burning through my parents' retirement funds with the fervor of a tech bro Icarus. He veiled at 4 separate startups in 5 years. There was the app that delivered artisanal kale to your door, the crypto-based pet sitting service, the subscription box for bespoke beard oils, and finally a virtual reality real estate platform that never left beta. Each venture collapsed louder than the last, leaving a crater of debt and excuses, which my parents were always there to fill with more money and hollow praise. And now, magically, after my photo appeared in the magazine, he wanted to pivot into the food business. Specifically, my food business, the one that he had previously mocked as a cute little cafe for hipsters. He saw the lines out the door, read the press, and suddenly discovered a lifelong, latent passion for gastronomy that conveniently required a fully established, critically acclaimed restaurant as its starting point. The confrontation happened at their immaculate dining table, the polished mahogany surface like a cold, dark lake between us. His dad said, "We're offering you a way out. It's exhausting work. You look tired. You need a break. Let Aaron take it from here. He's got a vision, a real business plan. He'll franchise it." The word franchised landed with a thud, a hollow corporate buzzword that had no place describing the soulful, intimate space I had created. My hands were clenched in my lap, hidden beneath the table. I forced one to reach out and open the folder. The top seat was a standard asset transfer agreement. My name was on the transferor line. Aaron's was on the transferee line. I scanned the document, my heart hammering against my ribs, looking for a number, a valuation, anything. There was nothing. No buyout. No financial consideration. Not a single dollar for 6 years of my life. It was just a naked legal demand for me to sign my life's work over. The compensation was meant to be their continued approval, a return to the fold. A handshake deal, family to family, where I would provide the asset and they would provide the absolution for my ambition. With my signature, I would be walking away from everything I had built, empty-handed, while the golden child, who had failed upwards his entire life, was handed the keys to my kingdom, wrapped in the lie that it was for my own good. Or rather, Aaron did. My brother. The golden child, whose every misstep was lovingly reframed as a valuable learning experience. While I was studying flavor profiles and knife skills, he was burning for my parents' retirement funds with the fervor of a tech bro Icarus. He failed at 4 separate startups in 5 years. There was the app that delivered artisanal kale to your door, the crypto-based pet sitting service, the subscription box for bespoke beard oils, and finally a virtual reality real estate platform that never left beta. Each venture collapsed louder than the last, leaving a crater of debt and excuses, which my parents were always there to fill with more money and hollow praise. And now, magically, after my photo appeared in the magazine, he wanted to pivot into the food business. Specifically, my food business. The one that he had previously mocked as a cute little cafe for hipsters. He saw the lines out the door, read the press, and suddenly discovered a lifelong, latent passion for gastronomy that conveniently required a fully established, critically acclaimed restaurant as its starting point. Aaron announced he's already told our investors we'll be rebranding by summer. He spoke like it was a done deal and the papers were already signed. We're thinking Aura or the Aaron James Collective, something more elevated. Zoe's helping with the social media campaign. She's already storyboarding the launch. It's gonna be huge.
I was utterly speechless, my mind reeling. This wasn't a negotiation. It wasn't even a request. They didn't ask for my opinion. They didn't offer a single cent of compensation. They had simply decided in a closed-door meeting from which I was excluded how my future would unfold. They had dissected my dreams, my sweat, my identity, and had drawn up a blueprint for its erasure. And just like that, standing there in my parents' dining room, I could feel myself being systematically wiped from the canvas of my own life, my vibrant colors painted over with Aaron's bland corporate gray. The worst part, the part that twisted the knife with surgical precision, was how they framed my devastation as a character flaw. "Don't be selfish, Lena," my mom chimed in, her voice a masterful blend of disappointment and condescension. She sighed as if my visible pain was a tedious burden. "You have to see the bigger picture. Aaron's starting a family. He and Zoe are looking at houses. He needs a stable income, a real foundation." The hypocrisy was so vast it was almost breathtaking. My voice, when I found it, was low and trembling with a decade of repressed injustice. "So did I said, looking directly at my mother, then my father. I needed a stable income when I was living on instant noodles and working 80-hour weeks to build something. But no one ever offered me a shortcut. No one handed me a fully formed business and told me to put my name on the door." The silence that followed was heavier than any shout, filled with the unspoken truth that my struggle had never mattered, only my brother's comfort did. They didn't listen. They never did. My words weren't arguments to be considered. They were merely inconvenient noise, static disrupting the perfect picture of their plan. My father looked at me with impatience, my mother with cold dismissal, and Aaron with unshakable entitlement. My refusal was a temporary obstacle, a petulant child's no that would soon be worn down by the weight of their collective will. But they didn't know something very important. They were so confident in their power play, so assured of my eventual capitulation, that they never considered I might have my own chess pieces in motion. 3 weeks ago, on a rainy Tuesday night, after the dinner rush, Zoe had shown up at my restaurant, alone. I'd been wiping down the counters, the familiar scent of garlic and rosemary hanging in the air, when I saw her silhouette hesitating at the door. She looked out of place, a delicate, nervous bird in a world of steam and fire. She said, "I need to talk to you privately," her voice barely a whisper over the hum of the walk-in cooler. I led her to the back booth, the one tucked away in the corner, where the light was soft. She didn't order anything, just clutched her purse in her lap like a life preserver. She said, "I know this is weird, but I'm not okay with what Aaron's doing." She looked pale, the kind of sickly pale that comes from a churning conscience. She said, "I thought he was buying you out, a fair deal. I didn't realize he was just stealing it. This is theft, Lena." She went on to explain everything, the words tumbling out in a relieved, frantic rush. Aaron had spun a web of lies, not just to me, but to everyone. He had sat across from her parents at a lavish dinner, looked them in the eye, and promised them he was partnering with his sister, painting a picture of our harmonious family venture. He assured them it was all settled, a mere formality. More damningly, she revealed he wasn't even interested in the restaurant itself. He had used my success, my press clippings, and the fabricated story of taking over the Spruce route as collateral and proof of a stable asset to secure a final round of investors for his failing app, the very one I thought had crashed and burned months ago. Zoe had found his pitch deck by accident. He'd left his laptop open, and a file labeled Final Lifeline App Investor Pitch had caught her eye. Inside, the first slide featured a photoshopped image of him standing proudly in front of my restaurant with a bullet point boasting about his successful pivot into the high-margin hospitality sector to de-risk his tech venture. The restaurant was never the goal. It was just a shiny prop, a thing to be hollowed out and used as a shield for his next inevitable failure. And just like that, in the quiet back booth, with the rain pattering against the window, an unlikely alliance was forged in the cold fire of betrayal. The plan, as laid out in the cold, soulless slides of Aaron's pitch deck, was a meticulous blueprint for my professional execution. He wasn't just taking over my restaurant, he was planning to systematically dismantle my brand, push me out completely, and pilfer my most cherished recipes. The ones I developed and guarded for years to be rebranded under Aaron's name for a line of packaged meal kits. Lena's lamb karma would become Aaron's artisanal curry, mass-produced and stripped of all the soul I'd cooked into it. But the deepest cut came from the comments scrawled in the speaker notes, which Zoe had bravely photographed. He even mocked me in the slides, next to a bullet point about streamlining operations and removing sentimental attachments. He had written, "She's emotionally attached to the kitchen. It's her whole personality. Let her cry it out for a few weeks. She'll get over it." I felt sick. The rich aromas of my mother's cooking that once filled the dining room now turned my stomach. The man sitting across from me wasn't just an opportunistic brother. He was a stranger who viewed my heart and soul as a minor operational hurdle.
But Zoe wasn't done. Her hand was trembling as she scrolled further. "There's more," she had whispered, her voice thick with disgust. She pulled out her phone and showed me a devastating collection of evidence. Screenshots of group chats with his investor friends where he bragged about his master manipulation, emails detailing his timeline for my removal, and most damning of all, voice memos, his own voice, crisp and arrogant, where he joked about how he'd guilt-tripped the old folks into doing his dirty work and casually mentioned having a backup chef, a culinary school dropout he'd hired for pennies, lined up to replace me the moment I was out of the picture. And now, here we were, sitting at this suffocating Sunday dinner, the silverware gleaming under the chandelier, with everyone expecting me to smile politely and sign away my dream, my name, my future. They saw a docile daughter finally falling in line. They had no idea they were facing a woman armed with the truth. I stood up slowly, the legs of my chair scraping against the polished floor in a sound that cut through the silence. I looked at each of them. My father's impatient glare, my mother's cold expectation, Aaron's smug, unshakable grin. I placed my palm flat on the manila folder and pushed it back across the table, right into the space between my father and his golden heir. "No." My mom blinked, as if I'd just spoken in a foreign tongue. "Excuse me?" My voice was clear, steady, and carried the weight of 6 years of struggle and 3 weeks of secret resolve. "I said no," I repeated, my gaze locking with hers. "You can disown me if that's what it takes. You can cut me out of the will, the family photos, your lives. But I am not giving up a single spoon, a single recipe, or a single square inch of what I built so that Aaron can destroy it for his own ego." Aaron rolled his eyes. "This isn't about destroying anything. You're being emotional, as usual." "Am I?" I smiled. It was a calm, knowing smile that finally gave him pause. That's when Zoe cleared her throat. Everyone turned to her, startled by the sound in the tense silence. I think it's time they know, she said softly, her voice steady now. She took out a USB drive and placed it on the polished table like a final piece in a game of chess. This has the Lifeline pitch deck, the investor emails where he lies about the partnership, the group chats where he mocks you. Everything. Aaron paled, his shark-like grin vanishing. Zoe, what are you doing? I'm telling the truth. I'm not marrying a liar or a thief. Boom. It was like all the air had been sucked out of the room. My dad snatched the USB as if it were a live grenade. Mom was sputtering, unable to form a coherent word. Aaron stood up, his chair screeching, and stormed out without another word. The fallout was spectacular. A week later, Aaron's investors backed out immediately. Turns out they really don't like being lied to and having their capital used as a weapon in a family feud. The backup chef was exposed as a complete fiction. And Zoe? She moved out, returned the ring, and posted a public letter on LinkedIn about female entrepreneurship and how women's success is constantly undermined. It went viral. Guess who messaged her to feature her on a new podcast about women in business? Me. As for my parents, they tried to mend things, claiming they were misled by Aaron. I didn't buy it. I told them, you made a choice, and so did I. The restaurant is still mine. I added a new dish to the menu, the Backstabber Burger. It's a spicy, defiantly delicious special. Customers love the name, especially when they hear the story behind it.